What does it take to stay on the top of the board in very large sales organizations at companies like Microsoft or IBM over the long run, over several decades, through multiple economic conditions, through waves of change and how technology works and who does what, through personal challenges and opportunities that all of us face as we go through life? Well, I wanted to get the perspective of someone who'd been through that washing machine of change and had still stayed on top. And that's why I was excited to welcome Kim Anderson to the podcast, where she shared her perspective on all of the rewards that a sales career has and how to navigate decisions in changing sales jobs and making sure that you always are in a position to serve your customer and to take care of your family as well. Well, thank you very much for joining me, Kim. I really appreciate it. We were talking a second ago about the long storied career that you've had in technology sales and some of the interesting things that you've done. I would love for you just to maybe introduce yourself to the audience and describe the kind of things that you've done in your career and where you've worked, and just at a high level what you've been doing these past few decades or so.
Okay, thank you very much for having me. I appreciate it, Stephen. I have been selling technology in Calgary and Canada across, because some of the jobs I had were national, other ones were just local, for over 30 years. And so I started actually in office equipment sales in Calgary here at Minolta, and I quickly realized that if I was going to work from Monday to Friday and I was going to put in the time and effort into selling to businesses, that I would pick a different stream of technology that was higher paying, more growth, more advancement. So I quickly realized that and landed a job in technology with Sorbus, which was a company that competed against digital for maintenance services for mainframe. And so that was my introduction. And I was a very young salesperson, and they didn't provide much training. So you were pretty much on your own to figure out this high-tech world of big servers and what it meant to have them maintained. Anyways, I was unhooking a lot of deals from digital, and so they sent a headhunter after me to get me out of the field so I would quit getting business away from them. And that kind of put me on track to having the career that I had, was getting the exposure to a very large corporation like digital and having the training and the people around me to support me. And from there, it just was one of those times when technology was taking off. The industry was still pretty new in the 90s. And then I managed to move from digital over to what was called System House at the time, SHL System House, and they were bought by WorldCom. And that was sort of the catalyst. It was Y2K time, and I came in as the last token rep of 9, and I got all the bad accounts. And those were people who hadn't bought anything or upgraded anything for a long time. And I was just, I struck the load, right time, right place, because every account that I had that was garbage to all the other reps had to refresh everything in their world. And so that experience literally changed my life, because I made so much money in a short period of time, and landed huge deals, multi-million-dollar contracts at a time when I was sort of fresh. I would call me, year 5 into it or year 8 into it, which in technology sales is still fresh, because there's always so much to learn. And that from there, I just continued to work for major companies like IBM and Microsoft, and they were always well-paying jobs and a fabulous experience for sure. Anybody that was around at those times and even now knows that, things have tightened up considerably in the tech companies right now, but I've traveled to many places on companies' dime. And so I've eaten in the finest restaurants, and I have stayed in the finest hotels, and been treated royally by all these sales conferences that they have. So it's been fabulous. And now that I'm retired, I look back and I appreciate everything that I was given by those tech companies.
Yeah, if you get the right amount of travel with a tech sales job, it can be quite fun, right? Getting out of town every once in a while to enjoy a steak with a client, that's not a bad way to spend a couple of days during the week for sure. And
Definitely.
I'm also thinking too, you were in Calgary in the early 2000s. I mean, there was a boom there in the 2000s, right when the price of oil was very high. So that's
Yeah,
probably
there
the
was.
yeah, I mean, that must have been helpful too to have such a strong economy behind it.
Yeah, yeah, that certainly helped. But then you got to remember in the year 2000, there was a tech bubble and it burst.
Yeah.
And a lot of people lost a lot of money in tech because they had invested in technology companies and they were gone. Commerce One was big, all these companies. So although Calgary was booming for oil and gas, the technology that you sell to the oil and gas companies isn't necessarily the same thing that you would sell to anybody else. It's very specific.
Hmm.
And the only platform that they would really invest in is your back office, which is why SAP made so much money in Calgary. I mean, SAP was started in Western Canada by two gals. I was in the boardroom with them, Donna Newman and Carol Birch. And they started from two people that had an accounting background and sold accounting software into Carol ran SAP Canada at a later point. So they came in at a time when they could actually sell a platform, a back office platform to an oil and gas company. All the other applications are very specific. So if you're selling technology, they're very, very specific to what they need versus other companies.
Yeah. So I know I've talked to some of the younger reps that I work with who are experienced in sales and they're hitting big numbers and they're doing really well, but they've never really sold into a down market before or the place where economically we're struggling, right? And you've of course lived through and sold into a number of those throughout your career. I mean, how does that change your approach, or like what does that what's that how is that different for you when you're selling when the economy's bad and when budgets are a little tighter?
Well, I think okay, so if they're an enterprise customer and you're working for a major company like a Microsoft or an IBM, um, they can only cut so much out of their budget. They still need your technology. So even in a down economy, they still need technology to run their business. And they need, so for example, budgets are tight, but they have to pick their priorities like every CIO and CEO. They have their things that are the most important thing on their mind that they have to address. And so the money will move from one area of the business to another area of the business to take care of the priority of cybersecurity,
Mhm.
to take care of the priority of, we need to implement the following and we need it now. And that will take priority. So I think that, if you look at even the when the economy is down, they still need to have uh, human resources platform. They still need to pay people. They still need onboarding and, letting people go. There's still that whole requirement there. And it's traditionally, you've got on-premise software technology that would take care of that. Now everything's in the cloud. So the companies like Workday, Snowflake, you can the service now, even though the economy goes down, the requirement to still have that technology is still there. So I would say it's more about who you're working for than the budget is tight.
Yeah, the quality of opportunity, I guess, is even more important, right? When you're working with that. I mean, I work with a number of people in technology sales, and what I hear is that people are slower to approve new investments, right? And they need to see more proof that the investment's gonna pay off, that there is a return to it, and that's where I think a lot of technology people have moved is, into the business world and where they're actually explaining how this helps the company and not just how it solves a technical problem. And maybe that's been more important for a lot of people I work with in technology sales during the down economy too.
Right. I mean, there's got to be a business problem that you're solving for any technology, or it wouldn't have been created, right? I mean, some gadgets are cool, but we know that those don't fly anymore. There's
Yeah.
got to be a reason that you created this application or this technology solution to solve a business problem.
Yeah. Right. And drawing that connection between the two of them. That's interesting. So throughout your career, do you find yourself primarily working then at the C level, or were you into the VP and director level, or what was a common contact for you?
It was a mix of everything. So it could be a business department head, like a VP of HR, if you were, it depends on what you're selling. If you're selling a human resources solution, you're dealing with the HR people. You know, when you're working for large companies, you're always competing, right? So when I was selling to the mid-market SAP solutions, I mean, they are not just looking at SAP, they're looking at Oracle and they're looking at whoever else might come to the table. That you didn't pick your top three. So because you're selling such sophisticated software, you're dealing with the business users who bring you in, and then you've got your IT guys, the gatekeepers of all good things, that are going to sort of make sure that whatever the business user is buying actually fits with that architecture and that infrastructure and everything that they've got in the background, because they have to knit it together, right? So that's why the enterprise architects become so critical to everything, because they have to make sure that when they implement anything, that it's going to be uh, implemented properly, all the security is gone through, etc. So they have to make sure that whatever the business is buying is going to be compatible with whatever they've already got.
Do you have a process that you use for making sure you establish relationships with all of the different contacts within a company?
You know, that is a really big thing for any rep to do. If you have got an account or two or three major accounts, then you can do that. And if you're a vendor of record, then you can do that. You've got a seat at the table all the time. So I was blessed. There's only a couple of times that I worked for a smaller company, and it would be hard to get a seat at the table. But when you're representing Microsoft, it's really easy to get a seat at the table. And I mean, they do so much to promote the company. They're operating their executive with the company's executive. So you don't really have to focus on the C-suite as much, because they've got people from Microsoft that can talk to the C-suite. So
Mm-hmm.
as an account manager or a channel manager, you're not really having to spend as much time at the top levels as what you think. And they don't really, like, the last time that I was working a large account was ATB Financial. And I managed to work at the C-suite with them. And it was great, but they have their own priorities. And so unless you've got a really good uh, basis for holding a conversation with them about some technology and some solution you're bringing to the table, am I providing value to them? Probably not. Are they providing value to me? Well, it's nice to have a conversation with the CEO of ATB, but they hire a whole bunch of people to go and evaluate technology. And so it's like, okay, that's nice. I think if the spend is significant, I think if I could say if it was a global account and their spend was 100 million, you're pretty relevant in their world.
Yeah.
As an account manager, you'd have to be a real senior account manager in that capacity, right? They have to
Yeah.
look at it from the customer's lens. And I always ask them, how do you buy, and who buys, and who's got signing authority for a couple $1 million contract? How does that work in your organization? Those are the questions that I would ask right out of the gate, to any prospect, of like, how do you do your business with vendors today, and how do I get in the loop, and what would I have to do to earn the right to get a seat at the table and even present my offer. You have to think of that. One of the key things that I would honestly say, Steve, that most salespeople don't do well, even some really good salespeople don't do well, They don't do their homework. They don't go and research on LinkedIn or on the internet the company. What do they care about? What industry are they in, and what do they care about? And what are their challenges? And who are the people that are leading the organization, and where did they come from? Because if you look at a LinkedIn profile and you find out that this individual used to work at, let's say, WestJet, and he was doing this job at WestJet, and now he's over here, you can kind of get an idea of their background, what they did, how long they were there, the position that they held, and so on. So before I even tackle any sales opportunity, if I'm starting a new position, the first thing I do is comb through that customer list thoroughly to find out exactly, have they had a relationship in the past with this company? And if they did and it went sideways, what happened? But who are the people that are running that company is the most important thing. And getting on that LinkedIn to me is one of the best tools ever given to professional salespeople and any professional person, whether you're a CEO or whatever. If I'm a CEO and I'm going to meet with somebody I don't know, I go on LinkedIn, I can figure out pretty quickly where they came from and what they're about. And what university they went to. I mean, all of that stuff was sales 101 when I started in sales. It was like you walked into the person's office and you looked at the pictures on the wall and you said, oh, they're into hockey, or oh, they've got a family, and you try and that was your icebreaker at the time, because you had no other way of knowing who you were dealing with. And now with all the information on the internet, I mean, you can pretty well figure out within a half an hour you could put together your call plan and know who these people are. I mean, there's so much resources available that I didn't have when I was in sales for 20 years, and up until the last 15 years, I would say. You've got access to absolutely just about everything. There's a company that I use, their name escapes me right now, but they will give you a report of the entire organization, all the technology that they've used, what they've bought, everything that you ever want to know about that company and didn't care to ask. And they're brilliant.
Yeah, it's ironic considering how much information is available. How often I go into meetings with salespeople and they come unprepared, and it's, well, what does your company do, and how many users do you have, and basic questions that are pretty easy to research online, and it drives me nuts when they come into that conversation that way. And then on the other side of it too, at the end of the meeting, they take no notes at all, and then don't send a follow-up email. I mean, this feels like sales 101 to me, but you have to, put a bow on it, because the person you're meeting with, he has 13 meetings on his calendar, and you're just one of them. So he's not going to remember this unless you send that follow-up email and do it. I mean, it feels like blocking. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I just think that there's a lot of salespeople that aren't disciplined. They just don't take the time to understand the company and the customer, and yet they want to rush in and sell them something, and they don't even know what the business is.
Yeah.
And then you've got companies that are training people that are saying you have to get to the business users, but the people that are representing your technology company don't know what these businesses do. And it's complex. Like if somebody want to send somebody into a CP rail to go and sell them something, you better know what that company does, that they're in the transportation business, and what do they transport, and how do they move those trains all over the country. Like you have to know what that business does.
Well, and what the person you're meeting with, how are they being judged at the end of the year? Like what are their goals likely to be, given their role and given the commitments that the CEO has made to the board? And that's all available online. You can pull it down an annual report, and it shows all the information. And I guess that's what I really want to get into with you is, you've worked with, I'm sure, many salespeople throughout your career. This is a podcast really aimed at people who are probably very successful in sales and are doing really well, but maybe what they're trying to do is get to that top 2.1% performer, right? So 2 standard deviations above the mean. They're trying to be at the top of the board, top 2 out of 100 sales reps that are out there. And that's I think that's somewhere that you've been throughout your career. I guess that what I'm trying to get at is what's the difference between someone who merely hits quota and does good work, but merely hits quota, and someone who is one of those top performers at the very top of an organization.
I would see the difference as somebody being extremely passionate about their work. And I don't see passion in a lot of salespeople. Like they're looking at it as they're proud that they've landed the job with, we'll pick on Microsoft. And they compensate their people very well. But they're not there to be the top performer. That's not their thinking. They're just happy they've got a job in tech sales.
Yeah.
The difference is when somebody is totally passionate about what they're doing and love the challenge of making as much money as they possibly can. And really, it is. You've got to be driven by dollars in the tech sales business because it'll kill you if you're just coming in there thinking, well, I've got a good base, and if I overachieve, oh well. But they're happy to live on that six-figure income. I mean, a lot of this is more money than some lawyers make, and they're hired in on year 2 or 3, right? And they're given a six-figure income. They don't understand that that's just for you to do the basics of working for this company. What we really need you to do is overachieve. Like, here's your quota, but we'd like you to overachieve. And I don't think there's enough emphasis for the salespeople to understand how the accelerators work and how much money they really could make. And I mean, I don't know how many salespeople that I've worked with that would say, yeah, I've got this quota, but man, I'm going to knock it out of the park because I want to get the most I can while I'm doing my work. You're there anyways.
Yeah.
But I don't see them visualizing the success that they need to have it in their head. That do they see themselves as being an overachiever? If you ask salespeople, do you see yourself being an overachiever? Can you imagine being on the stage and being number 1 at the end of the year? Can you imagine that? If they can't, they're just there to, fill a seat and get a paycheck and think it's fun, but
I'd say that the size of impact that a salesperson potentially can have in a company is so much greater than almost any other role, right? Because salespeople in an indirect way at least create jobs, right? And allow the company to grow and revenue solves all problems, as they say. So you're able to really help all of the people that you consider coworkers and spend time with, and that's always been very rewarding for me specifically. And then I always feel like I've done my best work when I've felt a great deal of loyalty toward the people, the customer that I'm working for, and trying
right.
to help them out for it. I think you're right about that money being the incentive that gets you to the very top, right? Like the thing I just talked to a person named Rob that I've worked with for years, and Rob was talking about a story where he, at midnight on New Year's Eve was turning a deal because he wanted to go to the President's Club, and I think that's the kind of drive that you can have as you really
Exactly.
think about not just the money, but also the impact that you have on the company by doing it.
Right. I don't even think that most salespeople would even consider that. I really don't. I think the top ones do. They get it. But if you look, it's always the 80-20 rule, right? 80% of your revenue is going to come from 20% of your salespeople.
Sure.
And that's kind of the way it's worked in the world. And those salespeople have to be managed and motivated. And a lot of through my career, when I wasn't happy with what I was happy with the money, but I wasn't happy with the company, was when I didn't feel that I mattered and that I was managed and motivated.
Mm-hmm.
That's exactly it, the 3 M's. I didn't matter, so I couldn't be motivated because I didn't feel important. Even though I was, here's your paycheck and here's your quota, and then the manager is just out of sight. I mean,
Yeah.
a lot of salespeople fail because they have very poor managers.
Yeah, that resonates. That hits home. But What I guess that's something to kind of dig into too. Is you think about like one of your sales managers who really was great at motivating you and made it clear that you matter to your organization, and contrast what that person did with someone who maybe was the opposite of it. Like is it just a difference of showing up and talking to you, or the relationship, or what's the difference between the two?
So I would have to say number one is culture. The culture of the company makes a big difference because um, if you look back at, let's say, IBM, I worked for IBM, they were very proud to be IBMers. And, but when they change management and they do things that are, I would say, they're corporate changes, but they don't make sense on a local level, then that just tells you that here, we're going to move you, Joe, over to here, and here's your employees, and here's your sales guys, and you go figure it out. And that person lives in another city, and
Yeah.
so they're disrupted in their comfort zone, and now they've got to go and meet salespeople that they don't know in a geography that they're not familiar with, and try to figure it out on their own. They're left on their own too. Like if you think about how many changes people make in territories, right? They increase your quota, they change your accounts on you, they do all kinds of, in my mind, unnatural things. You're just getting into the rhythm of what you're working on, and then it's like, oh well, we have to do this because somebody, what at the top, ruffled some feathers, and now everybody's shook up, and now we have to make these changes, and all of that comes down and affects the salesperson. And we are very emotional people. We go really high and we go really low, and it's really easy to shake our foundation with a lot of change.
Yeah.
But my best managers were people. Like they really liked what they did. They liked managing. They liked sales. I would say they loved the company they were working for. And so it was really easy for that energy to flow through the entire organization because it was top down that everybody loved working for, I'll give you an example, System House. Like there wasn't anybody that I met that didn't like working for System House. And the culture was great. Everybody would have like a lot of work to do, but we had fun. And my manager cared. It was always like, good morning, how's it going? Help me out with whatever I needed for resources to get what I needed done as far as a proposal or whatever I had to do to get to the customer. Just really supportive and just a really nice people.
Yeah.
They're genuinely nice people, but I have worked for people that I know they don't like people, and yet they're dealing with people and they don't like people. So, I
It
mean, a
feels like
bad manager is one that just doesn't pay any attention to you.
yeah, liking people is kind of table stakes when it comes to management. You have to enjoy the people you're talking to, right? I
Well,
know
a lot
you're
of them don't.
yeah. So I know you also do some consulting work, and I think you're working with like coaching some individuals and helping them get their numbers up and have those kinds of high performing careers like what you've had. I guess I'd love for you to talk through maybe your process of engagement. How do you work with these individuals, and what kinds of results have you achieved?
So in working with salespeople, it's mentoring them. I have spent a lot of time, coaching and explaining how to get into accounts and what you need to do to be successful. Sales hasn't changed that much. So I really hone in on the fact that um, calls, you have to make calls. That you have to, and nobody wants to. I don't like making calls, but you have to do it. So, calls equal sales. And it's a methodology. And I think the thing that I'm really good at is just helping them understand where to start, how to get your information with your customers, figuring out competition, knowing your 4 Ps, right? You got to know the 4 Ps: product, promotion, price, right? And what was it? Product. You got to know that. That's your basics. And a lot of people don't. So I start with them to get them through that just initial basic stuff. and then just work through, okay, so do you know your territory? Are you familiar with your industries? How do you map the product to the industry? What does success look like for your customer? What does success look like for you? Those are just basic questions that you have to ask every salesperson about, what is your goal this year? What are you trying to achieve? Well, I've got a quota. Okay, everybody gets that. You get a quota. But how are you going to get there? A lot of people don't know how they're going to achieve their quota. It's just, here's some accounts, and this has happened to me all the time. They think that, most companies think that a lot of people in your world. They do. They think that you come with a Rolodex, they called it, or a contact base, a list, that you can just transfer over to another company and start calling on these people and bring business. And you and I both know that's not how it works.
I've never seen it work. Not once. Not once in my
Never.
career have I seen someone come in and do that.
But that's what the ask is from the company. Because I can tell you that there are very few executives that I've met that actually want to sell anything.
Yeah.
I've worked with 3 entrepreneurs so far, and they really didn't want to sell anything. They just wanted to look at this application that I've developed. Isn't this great? And I'm going to run the company, and I'm going to have all this stuff. But okay, you have to go out and talk to people. And they don't want to talk to people. They want you to talk to people. And they think that you've talked to people that they want to talk to, and you haven't. Because if you've been working for, let's say I was working for IBM, I had a set of accounts, and I couldn't just walk over with those accounts and move over to another company and take that business away. It doesn't work that way, but they think it does.
Yeah, I've seen that quite a bit. Like there's a number of misperceptions that people who are not in sales have about the sales career. The other pet peeve I have is this one. I've when you're sitting in a sales interview, like looking for a new position and talking to somebody, and the CEO, general manager, whoever it is you're talking to, says something like about 3/4 of the way through the conversation says, if you don't hit your quota, we're going to have to let you go. And I've had that happen to me in multiple interviews in first conversations with people. It is so off-putting because I know, like we all know as salespeople that you have to perform to have the role, and only someone who has never had the role would ever be so gauche or whatever the word is to say that out loud. I mean, it's breathtaking to me when people do that.
Well, I haven't had anybody say that to me, thank goodness, because I would have just said, oh, okay. I think that part of what I've learned and sharing it with, the people that I've worked with that are sort of in the category that I'm in, which is retirement, we recognize that people don't appreciate how much effort it takes to actually sell technology.
Sure.
Like first of all, for a person to learn how to sell technology is at least a 3-year effort because there's too much to know. So you have to really go from I don't know what I don't know, and now I know I don't know, and then it takes, like they say, 10,000 hours of doing something before you become really good at it.
Yeah.
You probably read that in one of Maxwell Gladstone's books. I think that's his name. It takes 10,000 hours to hone your profession. And you really have to know exactly the methodology that you have to use. And I don't think that a lot of people out of the sales department appreciate how hard it is to do good work in sales, to be a really good salesperson. Yeah. Like there's so many things that you have to be good at. Time management, research, like our skill set is broad. And we have to condense all of that and be really good at it and, drop it like this and go get that $1 million deal. And the pressure that gets put on the salesperson to be able to develop the relationship maintain the relationship, close business, and all of that. I don't think we're appreciated. I really don't. And
Yeah, I think that's right. I think, I mean, that's part of what I love about the job is that it is something that requires so many different skills. It's not just presentation, it's not just cracking the jokes, that kind of thing. It's understanding business, and there's so much complexity to it that it is quite a rewarding way to spend your career.
it is. And the reason that there is these overachievers is because they're willing to put in the effort. They're like the NHL players, right? They just don't show up to play hockey. These guys are in it for the cup.
Yeah,
And that's what I look at when I look at star performers like Jared. You know, he's not there just for the job. He's in it to win it. He's in it there to win President's Club. He's there to win. He's there to be one of few, not one of many.
yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
that's you gotta go be a champion.
Well, I think that's a great note to leave it on. Kim, I appreciate so much you making time for us today. Thank you very much, and well, congratulations on a successful career in sales.
Well, thank you very much. I've had a wonderful, wonderful sales career, and I hope other people will take it to heart and realize that it is a wonderful place to sell is in technology sales.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right.
Great.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. It's been great. All right. Have a good evening.
You too. Thank you.